It's okay.
Is it too big?
No, it's good.
Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
We were so excited.
Can't tell.
It was so cool.
Yeah. So there is there is not a technique available. I mean, you can work maybe with invisible threads or something like that. But when you work with invisible threads, which would become visible in the infrared recording, that's why we choose infrared recording. Invisible
Yes.
threads would somehow show up in a false color display here in such an environment. And
Hang on.
tell me how you balance match on an invisible thread. So you need to have an object that has physicality, which somehow becomes balanced on an invisible thread. Other explanations are not available here. And the moment the match started to levitate between my hands, the explanation that maybe an invisible thread is being used can be excluded. But of course, imagery and video material, you can always allege it is somehow tampered with or whatnot. So to sit in front of it and be very close to it, like Inge was walking around me and looking at it from every side. We had average lights in the kitchen. Not that you believe it was taken in darkness and that's why we took infrared. No, no, we had a regular light. Everybody was able to see it without any form or help. And we use the infrared actually to make things visible which are usually not visible and to show that even not in the infrared spectrum there is any form of helping device or whatnot visible. So, but this is only an example. You cannot prove with this the reality of psychokinesis. Maybe a little bit, but not too much, because as I said, these materials can always be tampered with or manipulated.
Yep.
Important is when you have the opportunity to be at location when something like this is being done and observe with your own eyes, get close to it. In earlier days, I even gave the opportunity to grab into the psychokinetic field to see that there is no connection between the manipulated objects. I did a lot of experiments with our Professor Söderling, who was for years the circle leader of the Felix Circle. And I believe he has even written about our experiments. I don't know. So, okay, this is what we wanted to share with you. These are interesting documents per se. We have added even an experimentation we did here in Perth the first evening in midst of the Richards family. We were all sitting directly at one another at the kitchen table here, and we again filmed in average kitchen light in infrared, and we have again caught very, very interesting um, behavior of matches inside of the PK field.
Is
So
that
if you are
is that
interested
the
in
one that?
how
guys. Up you go. Come on up, come on up. Up. Yes, yes. Up they come. There it is.
Oh, that stood in the wall here actually. So I don't know if you could really see it. We could not really see it. The delay, the download of the images were extremely delayed, and actually the sound was not correct aligned to the images. So I don't know. I would simply recommend have a look at that video by yourself with your own beyond this Zoom group chat, because you should see how these matches behave in the PK field. That's quite interesting. Specifically at the end, one match is jumping up from the heap of matches, and it is wobbling in the PK field, the kind of wobbling we already saw in one of the other parts, or simply a recommendation.
Have you got the one there with the lights coming out of the fingertips?
This is the number one.
Number one, was it?
Number one.
That was very interesting too.
Okay, I'll see if I can find it.
Yes, there is somehow a light discharging going on under my fingers, and the infrared camera caught that in one instance, and this is presented in number 1 of 7. For those but with that upload or download problem, it makes no sense to present it here. I would.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Deb.
Hi, Dad.
Hi. I just wanted to talk about the first time you did that at Inge's, just off the cuff. It wasn't planned. You threw down that the silk flower and a couple of pieces of cutlery and the matchsticks. When you did that the first time with the matchsticks, remember 3 of them came up between your hands and danced like this. It was amazing. But we weren't prepared at that time to photograph it. But I was probably this far from you. I was right next to you, and that was just phenomenal. And when you finished, you just went, wow, and just drop your head on the table. You remember, Inge? That was pretty awesome. Yeah, one of the yeah.
You know, I was so stunned by myself that that 3 matches went up in between my hands and danced in between my hands. I had never seen that myself. And that's why my head dropped onto the wooden table with such a thud.
I'm logged onto your website now, Kai. So
That was,
oh yeah, I saw that.
and it is, and again there it is.
Yep.
And it's hard to see though on this download.
Yeah, I mean, we again had a very bad download, but if you are interested, look at felixcircle.blogspot.com, where we present all our material and all the other materials. Oh, this first image, Karen, this first image
Pink
shows, no, go back down, that first photo above the videos. Go down, go down, go down, go down, go down, go down. There, this one, which is coming up. This is showing beautifully what...
No, you missed it.
No, the photo above the videos. We just went over it. That is showing the uprightly standing match.
Yes.
Here.
Yeah, I'm showing it.
This was one of the...
Yep.
Yeah, and this was one of the starting moments for the levitation. And
Cool.
yeah, it's simply interesting to observe that. And in regards to what I am feeling,
Yep.
actually, first of all, I am developing this, I don't know, since I'm 15, I'm involved in all sorts of experiments between electronic voice phenomena, psychokinesis, remote viewing, and of course, um, physical experimental sittings. As you know, I'm doing that since 1983. Um, in the beginning, I believed somebody approaches me from behind and lays his hands or his arms over my shoulder in front of me, but this feeling has totally disappeared. And something else started to happen. Every time before a reaction of objects is visible in front of me, I very suddenly feel very weak. It is as if my blood pressure drops, actually. I nearly start to tremble. It is a feeling as if you are enormously, it's like a shock maybe or something. And very early afterwards, the reaction of the objects then starts to become visible. This feeling I know very well from our table sessions. Sometimes in the end, we, together with the group, provoke an object to be falling from the ceiling by everybody is taking the hand of the neighbor, and we are slightly squeezing more and more our held hands,
Mm-hmm.
projecting the power onto a visualized drop of water hanging at the ceiling in midst of the table's surface. And the more we squeeze our hands, the more the drop of water, the virtual, visualized drop of water grows until gravity overtakes. The drop of water falls, and in exactly that moment, a figurine or something else is being produced and lands with a thud on the table. This happens in red light in front of everybody's eyes who is holding hands, standing around the table. And from these experiments, I know that feeling so very well. In the moment before this actually happens, I feel this massive weakness, that really my knees get weak, and then it happens.
Yeah, go, Deb.
I've got lots of questions, always.
Yep.
Kai, when you were talking about that just then, about that kind of hands coming over your shoulders, move, it's a bit of feedback,
Sound that is really good.
move to a different feeling or a different sense. How much do you think is your energy, and how much do you think is spirit in there, or is spirit not in there at all, or what's your sense of that?
Dear Deb, you know that we are working with advanced forms of interpretation in regards to what spirit is and what thoughts are and what intuitions are, and that on a specific level, my own intuition can actually become a spirit. So actually, I am myself um, wobbling like the match between between these both explanations. But basically, I believe that we are observing effects here, which I mainly achieve because I, over the last 30 years, have deeply, innerly understood that the physical world is an illusion. And the moment when I have understood that the physical world is an illusion, even my body is an illusion, and the match is an illusion as well. It is in the end a play of consciousness, and consciousness is spirit in the end. Let's keep it that way.
Great, that's great explanation, because I remember you saying in one of the sittings, because I saw it a couple of times, that you talked to the match and you said, you are not solid, or yeah, this is not real. And it was a kind of a merging of your consciousness and your whatever. With
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
Mwah.
Anyone else have any questions? Come on, you must have some questions about what happened. Brenda, go for it.
I wanted to ask Heidi, is it necessary to be a physical medium in order to be able to do this?
Oh, I don't think so. Oh, no. And even what we do in relation to our so-called physical mediumship, I know that lives in our own blood. My advantage was that I started with this with 15. With many who have not nurtured this until they are, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 years of age, it may be a little bit harder to reactivate it. But I know that our relationship and even this physical form of gathering with spirits is as old as mankind, probably even older as mankind, actually. And that it is an archetype of our own existence. So even the physical mediumship thing is a thing that should be more or less common for everybody who might like to dive into that energy. I would like to motivate everybody who might feel drawn to this area of work. Probably there's a reason that you feel that draw to that area of work, because probably you have activatable compounds within you that might respond in the seance room. So give it a go.
When you're doing your physical mediumship, Heidi, you go unconscious?
Oh, yes. This is the tradition of the Western facilitators, to have that buffer. The trance is the buffer that we need not to let the spirits directly into our lives, like the Northern American Indians are doing, or the Indian avatars are doing. We Westerners choose to have that buffer between us and these anomalous experiences, and I was trained in that tradition. If I had had the overview I have today, I would have tried to avoid this trance state actually in the first place, because I could observe more of it myself.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You have your hand up, Matt. Would you like to unmute yourself?
Thank you for that. I just wanted to ask, Kai, if you've got any tips for anyone or advice on people who are wanting to develop the psychokinetic capabilities and experiment with that to develop the phenomena.
Absolutely. I would, the thing I just said about the fact that the physical world is an illusion created by the perceptual device of our brain. So try to find out why I am claiming the world is an illusion. And as soon as you have found out the world is an illusion, swallow that deeply, deeply, deeply. This is the first thing. And as soon as everything becomes actually a play of consciousness, start to again use images which are originating actually in the material world, but transferred onto the virtual plane, they might help. I use the idea I have magnets in my hand. I use the idea I have threads between my fingers and move them over the objects And very much often, these both techniques, knowing that it is all an illusion, knowing that these images then can work on a conscious plane and may affect the images on that informal plane, transferring it into physical then in the end, this works very well. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Matt. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your interest. We have downstairs the sitters waiting, and I very much want to say thank you for your interest, and see you next time, guys. All the best. Good night.
You know, I was just where Kai was talking about the he was talking about he would like to be aware, yeah? He would have liked to be more aware. And I have talked to so many who sit for trance now or for physical, and their constant complaint is, I am still aware. I can't do anything about it, but I am still aware. And when I put him on the mind mirror, then I often see there is no bidder, you know, no active mind, but there's always an observer mind, yeah? And so I found it interesting where he was just saying, if I would have had a chance and wasn't trained like this, I would love to be able to just watch it happen, you know? And I believe with the changes they brought forward now, some time back now, to say science, religion needs to split, physical mediumship does not belong into religion, we need to stop controlling it, we need to let mediums and spirit have free field to experiment and to change as they did in shaman time. There is no control in shaman time. So I think maybe that has something to do with it, that so many mediums now say, I still can, I'm aware, or people now say, for instance, I hear the sitters saying, oh, there is a breeze, and I am then going, oh, make it colder, and it happens. There is a shift, but I'm not quite 100% sure how that shift will play out. But I think it's really interesting. Has anyone else here observed that?
No, I can't say that I've thought about it that much.
I'm just reminded, Inge, of something that Gary Mannion talked about in his video for his feed in Facebook recently. And he talked about, try this experiment when you're in trance and you're trance speaking, have that part of you that's you, that conscious part of you, sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And while you should be able to do both, while the trance speaker is speaking, you should be able to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, not out loud, but in your mind. And I think that's a fascinating experiment.
Or the same is what Gary will say in regards to that is sometimes that you can go and you have a radio playing and a television, yeah? And say either one is louder than the other. And then try to listen to one, say listen to the television and learn to totally cut the radio out. You know, or like I try listen to the music and really be in the music and so cut it out. And I was asking Jimmy the other day about telekinesis, and I go, oh my God, you know, like you talk about cryptoplasm, when we control it, how would I know who is controlling the energy in the seance? And then he was saying, maybe instruct the sitters to focus on something. All together, you focus on something you want, and then you tell the spirit to do something different and see what happens within that space. There you can tell if you work with cryptoplasm, which is also just photoplasm, but we control it, or it is photoplasm where the spirit controls it. I just love all these things, as you know.
Watching Kai doing the psychokinetic experiments, I'm immediately think of what happens when somebody from the other side, a spirit, is moving objects. So what I think is fascinating for people is that this is the mechanism that even people who are in spirit are able to move things psychokinetically. It's the same thing.
Exactly what Jimmy says. He says you as human beings can do exactly the same what we do in the seance room.
And if you think about what they say they do in the spirit world, as Kai said earlier, they think of something and it happens.
Exactly.
So we must have that same ability.
Yes, we do.
We must have that ability to actually manifest things. And I love that whole idea of what Kai said when we first came in about not knowing how the message comes through, but just thinking that she wants to make a message and it comes through on the apparatus.
That's
So
right.
I think for me, the implications of this are so extraordinary. Now, Kim had something to say. Kim?
Yeah, she's jumping up and down in the background there.
Jumping up and down. Oh, am I all right?
Yeah, you're right.
I was just that manifesting something just by, in essence, saying you want it. I had a brilliant example of that in my life, which was I did a shamanic apprenticeship for 4 years, and at the end of every year you were given a bead. I won't go into why, but when we then had a choice to go back and be actually ordained, I went to that ceremony. And when that was finished, nobody gave you a bead. And I thought to myself the next day I was going to go and walk in the labyrinth, which was composed of tiny little stones. And I thought, I would have liked another bead to symbolise, the completion here of being ordained. And so I'm walking on this labyrinth and I just looked down and there's this shiny little black thing. And I looked at it and I thought, that's odd, it looks like a beetle. But I picked it up and it was it's a petrified wooden bead with a hole through it. So it's, it is a bead. Someone's lost it or it's just appeared for me. And all around the edge, even better, a shaman stone has a circle in another colour that goes around the edge of a stone or around a stone that way, and it has a circle all the way around it. So, and it's no bigger than my thumbnail. It's just amazing that I found it. So that was just me thinking, I want that, and it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, we just need to believe more in us and our own ability. We're always looking for someone else. We're looking for other people, who tell us what to do and they're better. And then we want spirit to fix everything. When our life is crappy, we just want them to fix it. So we have always someone to blame. We just have to stand much more in our power, I think.
I think so too, Inga. Yeah.
Eddie, you're unmuted. Did you want to say something?
No, I'm just listening.
I just took it as that you wanted to talk.
Inge, you mentioned earlier about wanting an apport for somebody. Can you tell that story again about how your desire for that apport made it happen?
Yes, and I have said, was that real, or, what was it? Who created it? And he goes, in your case, it was very real, but due to the fact that your heart was so open, it was you demanding spirit to create that. So actually, we created that one for you. It's not long ago when I asked him, and he goes, but you could have, from the point especially where you were, you could have created that. But because I remember, so I was in the cabinet and then suddenly I found myself standing against the curtain. But I knew that my body was still sitting in the chair. Somehow I just knew, and I have done out of body before. So there was a woman saying, you know, everybody had an accord, but I never got an accord ever. And at that moment, all in the whole world I wanted was that woman to have an accord. And I felt like my whole chest was opening. It was just quite amazing. And the accord fell. And the accord was very significant for her. It was from where she came from. The date was when her dad passed and she misses him so much. And so it was everything for her. And so I asked about that. But in other sittings, we also have, and Karen can say the same, sitting in the cabinet and hearing something, you know, somebody saying, like the wind, you know, it's cold, oh, there's a breeze out here. And then just wishing to do this again. And it happens again. So is that luck or, but then, you know, I watch in a seance, for instance, I asked about, they're always talking about building a grid, and I never really got it. So not long ago, I said, listen, what is that grid business? What is happening there? And they say, well, we're building a grid to harness and build the energy within that space to build basically an area where the phenomena can happen, where we can easily move or bring people in from the spirit world to, like in Kai's, play the drum. It's like so powerful, suddenly this drum in the middle. And the kids come, they throw things around, whatever we do. So we build this grid, and that is where we harness the energy and build the energy. In Gary's cabinet, at the beginning, they would, because we had light on, they built it always, they used the grid within the cabinet. They didn't come out much. Then they started lifting the cabinet. Then they started building the grid outside. So, you know, like, say, in Kai's materialization, for instance, I noticed the materialization, the form comes out maybe this much from the cabinet. So now I believe, do they build the grid and build the energy just this far away from the cabinet so that then they build up the energy in that space? There are many things we just don't understand, but it's just good, I think, to learn who is in control. Like I see the trumpet, yeah? And I saw the trumpet go from side to side, not long ago, in Malaysia with Kai. And then Hans took my hand and moved my hand. And the trumpet was just following my hand. And I was saying to him, do you use an ectoplasmic rod, or do you use your mind? How are you moving this trumpet? And who is in control, I want to know. And he said, we are in control of this trumpet, yes? But then sometimes the trumpet gets a little bit haywire and people are shouting at it and come here, da, 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 da. So I believe, from what I learned, is that at times the sitters take the control from the spirit team and create that phenomenon.
Inge, this is fascinating. Particularly, I'm thinking of our meeting that we're going to have tomorrow about healing. It's Monday morning in Sydney time, 7 a.m.
Yeah, 4 o'clock here.
4 o'clock in the morning there. But what I'm thinking of is, you know, this power. When you say it is like probably the most effective prayers I've heard of when a mother is praying for her child, or when somebody is really from the bottom of their focus. It's not just, gee, I wish she'd get better. It's like, God, please take my life rather than this child. You know, that intensity of wanting, and especially if you have that focused with a group, then it becomes very powerful.
Definitely.
I'm just curious then, why is it that some healers are far more effective at able to do this? Is it something about that open heart, that open-heartedness? Is it something I'm thinking about someone like Harry Edwards, who obviously had a power to do this at a distance. That's probably something you've talked about with Gary as well.
Yes. Yes, I do believe in many cases, maybe I do believe the medium's makeup, the medium's ego, the medium's reasons why they do what they do. Then on the other hand, what you just said, this intensity, wanting to help and wanting to be an open channel, definitely would have something to do with it. The control they have with the medium. But yeah, this heart mind, not mind, heart mind, I think has a lot to do with it. Like if we have the pure intention, like I felt at the moment that a port happened, I had this absolute pure intention just for that lady, just to make her happy. That's all I wanted. And it was like, honest, like when people say your heart is bursting, just like that. It was so intense that I could so strongly feel it. And some healers, you just see when they start to work, they give everything. And then on the other side, there is the karmic record, or there is the past people have to go and learn from, that maybe they're not to be healed at that time. They might want to, but they maybe not to. I remember going to a lady, you might have heard the story from Louise, but going to a lady to the hospital, and she had healing for a long, long time from a medium. And she had breast cancer, and it had gave another 10 years, of life, and quite a good life. And then suddenly one day she didn't feel well. She went to the doctors and she had bone cancer, and it just was everywhere. And then they rang up Gary, who was here, and said, please come and just see her. And so he came, and Abraham came, and Abraham was saying to this lady, what do you want? What do you want? And she goes, well, I'm ready to go, but there's this what I would like to experience and that. And then he gave her some tips is not the word, some instructions for some, like putting castor oil, on your liver to detox overnight, and things like that to make it easier. And the lady was quite okay. You really didn't think she was really sick. That was on the Sunday night. And I saw her on the Tuesday. And when I walked in, she looked really, really yellow. She looked really, really bad. And she said to me, I'm ready. It's time, and she died at night. And I think maybe all Abraham had to do is just be there for her to make it easy. She had no pain until the last few hours, or half a day. So not every healing, I think, is necessarily maybe meant to do what we think it should do. Or, you know what I mean? It might not be that way, because sometimes, like I heard a lady brought into the Zetas at my house, and we had to nearly carry her into there. And then the Zetas spoke to her for a little while, and then one spirit communicator said to that lady, you would have already come to my side if you weren't so scared. I promise I will be with you from now on until I can take you. And you just speak to me and you will hear me. And within 18 hours, I think, not much more, the lady very, very peacefully passed over. So I don't think we know, You know what I mean?
Totally agree with you, Inge. Totally agree. A lot of us have been involved in healing over many years and have many stories like that. Of life plans and the reasons why people choose exit points at a particular time. But I just find it interesting, the connection between the intensity of the healing and the intensity of the focus that creates apports. And I think it's a wonderful learning tool for people. If faith can move mountains in terms of apports, well, what can it do in terms of the unseen things?
Yeah, but you know, women who have a child under the car, they lift the whole bloody car up.
Yes.
In that moment, they want to save their child. They don't say, oh, the car's a bit heavy today. No, they go, they do. Finish.
Exactly. And that's where a lot of this thing about, manifesting falls down. People will say, gee, I would like to have X, Y, and Z, but they don't put the passion behind it.
Or they put a passion behind it, but they haven't worked on all the crap inside, all the memories they have from as a child be told, you never will be good enough, or you never will be rich, or rich people are bad people. All this stuff, this subconscious stuff will stop you.
Very interesting. And so that's very important in terms of our developing physical mediums as well. How do we actually get across to them to remove the fears and remove the mental barriers? Is that something that the circles that you've spoken to are working on?
Yes. Well, the circles I sit with, we often have discussions in how to be a good sitter, because sitters go, like, oh, I saw energy coming, so I made energy balls. You know what? That's really not your job, energy balls. It's actually just be. Don't interfere with the energy, because you can take over the energy and create what you want to create and take it away from spirit control. And then they get a bit annoyed, but yeah, they're listening eventually. So yeah.
Well, that's very interesting, because I've heard controls say to the mental medium sitting, don't turn on your mental mediumship faculty, because it will interfere.
Does.
Do you agree with that, Inge?
Definitely does. Yes. Yes.
Why is that?
Well, I believe that they're taking over control over the energy within, the energy around them. Like a good example, I think, is for a long time when Gary was there was a tall man, and everybody could see him, and he would show his face, and his face changed from person to person, and people could put their hand into his belly where he got shot, how he died. And so everybody was talking about it. And then it became a little bit that the tall man always was there. And I was saying one day, you know what, Gary, I think the sittings start always sort of the same way. And I just wonder why it is. And so then Jimmy came the next sitting. Jimmy goes, I listened to you talk about doing the same thing. I want to give you homework. And so he said, you always, and all the sitters always talk about the tall man. So in a way, you have that expectation within your field. We really can't, it's like you're holding it, waiting for this tall man to come. So you're not open for us to take energy. You're not open to manipulate energy, because you all have an expectation of this man. He needs to come. So for us, it's easier to let him have his time before we can do anything else. So maybe just tell the sitters that he's not coming. So don't even wait for it, And we had so much new phenomena, because there was no expectation in the room from the sitters. They were all going, okay, show us then. And it was awesome. So it is true.
Yep.
It's very true.
Fascinating.
I'm aware that we're coming up to the top of the hour, and that you also will have to participate in the seance. So
yes, I am the control.
Check out for the people who...
For this, what do you have planned for your next talk, Inge? Have you thought that far ahead?
Yes, I have. Actually, I have asked Jimmy to speak to people.
Oh.
Because he is very much, he always goes to me, I talk to anyone. And because he is very, very good in getting a question, going into that person's energy, looking at their memory, you know, what we're talking about, and then coming from a point of explaining so many things. Sharon, doesn't he?
Yes.
Inge, could you just explain who Jimmy is for those who
Jimmy
don't know?
is the communicator of Gary Mannion, and he is the mouthpiece for the scientists who work with him. And so I have got used to that you can ask him anything you want, anything, nothing off bounds, and he just will explain it. And
Inge, what I think would be really useful is if he has any advice for our people who are trying to sit virtually in using Zoom to create physical mediumship. And that's going to be a big thing.
Yeah.
So that
I will be in the UK on next week. No, the week.
2 weeks. Yeah. 2 weeks from today.
Yes, and so I have asked already, and so he goes, yeah, no worries. So I said, because I'm in Somerset, in Parsonage, we do it from there.
Fantastic.